So,
Nice, don't work. Ah, but yeah. Oh, because then
it's
you
a
need to update
different
the
link, yeah.
wiki. Yeah, right.
So I just need that link. Um, Last minute hacking
No worries, it's okay.
stream,
I mean, people
and I need to send it also to me, David. Okay,
You cannot change it on Notion, on the website.
I can. I think we're ready.
Yeah, I think so.
Should we have them join? At all? And I'll take some minute to quickly change.
Let's go. Hi everyone, we're gonna start. We deal with all the technical issues. Does everyone have a seat? Yes? Okay. So I'll just enable the mic for everyone online and share my screen. Yep. Okay. Welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. So this is the opening ceremony of the AI Plus Environment Hackathon. We're really excited for this. I hope you all are super excited as well. I'm going to provide a quick overview of what today, tomorrow, the next couple of weeks are going to look like. A quick overview of what the Eco Hackathon is and what you can expect. So before I jump into the whole schedule, I'd like for you to take a quick look at the last step in the Eco Hackathon, which will be on July 11th, the X Prize finals in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. So this is why we're here today, the X Prize. But first of all, what is the X Prize? So basically, it's a global 5-year, $10 million competition. The Rainforest Edition, the challenge is to use novel technologies to expedite the monitoring of tropical biodiversity. And ETH Biodivex, that David over here is representing today, is one of the 6 finalists. So the 6 finalists will, for the final, have 24 hours to survey 100 hectares of rainforest. They don't know which area yet, and collect as much data as possible, and then they will have 48 hours to analyze the data and create as many insights as possible. Now, what are those insights? What's the connection with this hackathon? Basically, so mentors, environmental experts have identified some insights, which, like, there are a wide range. Like, anything that you can learn that has anything to do with the rainforest is an insight. So, like, some biodiversity metrics, wildfire risk, soil water content, those are all valuable insights that you can learn from the rainforest. And this is what the hackathon will be based on. So we have mentors who identify those insights. We have mentors who propose challenges that are linked to those insights. So for example, one of the challenge is tree canopy delineation. There's bioacoustic representation learning. So we have a range of challenges that are already like provided to you. You can decide to take part in those specific challenges. But you can also take a look at the insights and come up with your own project proposal. You'll have to chat with the mentors first, the environmental experts, to like make sure it has some real value, some real environmental insight. But you're free to come up with your own project. And you will do that through 2 tracks. So the first one is AI for Biodiversity, and it consists of like you will have access to our data set, and you will have to build and train machine learning models to analyze patterns, predict outcomes, classify the insight you're working on, etc. So this track is really based on developing machine learning methods to predict those insights. There is a second track, which is based on data visualization. So you'll use the same rich data sets, and you'll design interactive charts, maps, infographics that illustrate the complex relationship with the rainforest. And this is also very valuable. And of course, there is an intersection. If you're working on track 1, at the end of the day, you need to present your insights, and it's better to do it with convincing charts. Now, a quick overview of the kind of data you'll be able to work with. So a first type is geospatial data. So you'll have access to 100 hectares of LiDAR data, orthomosaics, and 400 layers of global environmental information. So this is a broad overview. Later in the afternoon, you'll have a deep dive into exactly the kind of data. You'll have access to acoustic data, you'll have access to plant data, and also insect data. Additionally from that, once you've formed your teams, there are a few like specific hack upgrades. So every team will be able to apply for 1 day of data labeling, because here, if you can see, we have, for example, here 6,000 labeled recordings, but we have also 30,000 unlabeled recordings. And for the plant data, it's labeled. For insect data, it's not labeled. So you'll have to figure out a bit how to work with that, so you can apply for a day of data labeling with a domain expert. You can also apply for computing. So you can apply with, okay, I don't know how to speak German, so I'm not going to say this. But you can apply to some supercomputers. You will have to write it.
I think you have to unmute the mic for the people on Zoom.
Oh no, it's 2 streams, so it should be, the audio should be okay.
Yeah, I think they can hear me. And this is streaming from, people are complaining? I don't.
David, could you check on the,
Maybe check on the.
Maybe it's on the live stream.
there was one person who didn't mention it. Yeah, but thanks for letting us know.
Yeah, sorry,
that's
that's
good.
Oh, someone say here it's fine.
I think it's fine. I can
Okay.
hear.
It's on the live stream, David.
Mm-hmm. Should work.
Okay.
There are people who wants to join.
They can also join on the live stream on YouTube, so it's fine. Okay.
Yeah, that's improved.
Okay, cool. So yeah, you'll be able to like draft a proposal, explain why you want to have access to the supercomputer, and the best pitches will be selected to run on the supercomputer. And teams can also ask about indigenous and traditional knowledge through one of our mentors. So that's very valuable knowledge. Now more into like going back to the schedule for today and tomorrow. So today is the opening ceremony. So I hope you all, if you haven't had the chance to grab a cake and coffee before we started, I hope you can get one after. This is the kickoff introduction, and then later this afternoon you'll be introduced to some tooling techniques, so like basics of remote sensing, how to leverage geospatial foundational models, some machine learning essentials, etc. And then you'll have a deep dive into the data. After all that, we'll have a break. There will be a networking apéro where you will also be able to start forming your teams, and where you will be able to start hacking, discovering the data and hacking. For tomorrow, there will be office hours and mentoring available. So starting from 12, you will be able to discuss with mentors. And from 2 p.m. there will be pizza, and then you can get more hacking done. For the rest of the couple of weeks, on May 27th, there will be a halftime check-in, and that's where the supercomputer pitch will take place. On June 2nd at midnight, that will be the deadline for the final submissions. On June 10th, we'll have the poster sessions for the best submissions. And like I said before, on July 11th will be the X Prize finals, which we can all stream on YouTube, I guess, since we're not all going to the Amazon. And then, sprinkled during the weeks, you will be able to come to the AI Center to enjoy pizza and drinks and have a more social vibe for the hackathon and code together. So that's all from my side. Thank you. Have a good hack. And this is the link to the wiki page that David created, where all the information that I presented are. So you're encouraged to scan that, and we'll also send it in the WhatsApp group. Yeah?
Thank you, Julia. So next, we wanted to start with some tuning techniques, getting you guys ready. A lot of the stuff that we are analyzing is going to be remote sensing. And I know that many of you might not have heard about remote sensing before, or what is that? What is a satellite image? Why is that different from ImageNet? So to get started, Sebastiano from our team is going to give a very quick tutorial on remote sensing. He's also going to be one of our mentors for you guys to ask any questions and dive deeper in. So thank you so much, Sebastiano, for doing that.
Oh, I use my own phone microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Nice.
So can people hear me online? Would I see this somehow? Okay, all right. Oh. Does that work out? Yeah, seems right. Okay, so I maybe have to start with, so I am not a biologist or an ecologist or anything like that. I'm doing a PhD in economics, but I ventured pretty deep into like AI and remote sensing for my work. I show one quick example afterwards. So this talk is basically targeted to people who maybe have the AI side, but never really worked with GIS or geography things and so on. I hope to strike a balance with that. I know the backgrounds are very diverse in here. So I just quickly tell you some basics about remote sensing, and then I show you some open source satellite resources that basically come on top of the four data sources you just saw before. And then I talk about some problems I had in the beginning going into this field. Right, so AI is really boosting remote sensing. So basically, what is really cool about remote sensing, and I'm especially talking about remote sensing on satellite imagery, is that these sources are really increasing. There's like more and more and more. Sensors are getting better, so there's more higher resolution as well. And basically any data set that is georeferenced can be referenced back to these resources, which makes it very, very diverse and agile. Well, and then obviously there is the whole algorithm part, which I think I don't need to talk further about. So the cool thing is that once you build a tool, you can actually use this very cheaply, very quickly to build huge amounts of huge data sets, because you can just run it over the whole world, basically, if it's robust enough to, if that makes sense. And this really lowers costs. So especially in my case, for research, this is great because it's a consistent, repeatable measurement over time and over space. Right, so maybe to give you an example that everything I just said makes a bit more sense. So this is from my own research. I study cities and how they develop in 3D. And basically, we put a lot of time into building one tool that is able to take the satellite imagery and just produce this output. So it's a 3D, relatively low resolution 3D model. And we're working in the context of China. So after we developed this tool, within 3 days, we were able to basically have 10 years, all of China as a 3D model. Which is, I think, really shows how cool these remote sensing techniques can be. So I walk you through the main open source satellite imagery out there. I think the ones that make sense for this hackathon. So first there is Landsat. This is, so it's quite crazy. This is around since the 70s. This is a 30-meter resolution image. So a pixel is 30 meter by 30 meter roughly. It's run by NASA, and so basically, if you develop a tool that is able to work on this and figure out something based on that, you can measure back into the 70s, which is, I think, I mean, it's a 30-meter resolution. Well, you don't see a tree on it. You don't see it. You only see colors. But still. So then there is kind of the upgraded version of that from the European Space Agency. I should say they're completely open source. You can just go and download them. A convenient tool to do that is Google Earth Engine, but you can always get it directly from these providers, basically. So Sentinel-2, this has a 10-meter resolution, so it's quite an upgrade. But it only started in 2017. And then basically the brother, the older brother of the Sentinel-2, this is a radar image, so that has the upside that you don't have any clouds that block your view. Basically every time it takes a picture, you can actually use it. And it goes also a little bit further back. And these two, Sentinel-1 and 2, they're great because their pixels exactly overlap, so you can use them, you can basically download them, and they already fit very well together. And then I think we hear this later, but I still wanted to include it here. There are these base maps of planets. So these are already composited. You don't have to care about clouds or anything, that they're basically already chosen the best one per month. This goes back to 2016, and it's even higher resolution, so it's below 5 meters. I wrote you can spot an elephant, but I guess you could also spot this tiger. So we are getting into a resolution where you can actually see, I guess, organisms in the, I don't know if that's really true. And so it's a commercial product, but as we will see in the later in the afternoon, you can actually use it as an open source as well for for the Amazon. Right. So basically, it's three things I want to give you on the way. So first, clouds. So these are, in that case, something bad because they block your view, and you have to work your way around it somehow. So again, basically, base maps already solves this problem for you, so you can just go with that. The other way is basically you composite parts that are not cloudy together. This can get quite involved quite quickly, or it has other downsides. But if you want to do that yourself, Google Earth Engine is I think, your tool that makes it very easy. And then, well, use radar images. They don't suffer from that downside. Then map projections. So that was, so basically, if an image is a regular sampling in like fixed distance, since we're looking at the globe, this fixed distance is not that clear what it actually is. So depending on the projection you use, that you have downsides and upsides of certain projections. Just be aware that this exists. It's not just an image. It's actually an image that is projected on a globe, and you just always need to project back into the same format, basically. And then, so often what you work with is basically a continuous image over the whole world. So you need to cut this down, make it into sensible parts, and then put them together afterwards. And this should be thought of from the very beginning, otherwise one runs into trouble later. I'm happy to help if groups go into remote sensing. I can also help you with codes to use Google Earth Engine to composite stuff and so on. Yeah, happy to be of assistance.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for one or two questions. If not, he's a mentor, so you can question him as much as you want in the WhatsApp group, also in Discord. So yeah, let's move on. Thank you so much for the presentation. We are going to geospatial foundation models now from IBM Research, which is also one of our co-organizers here and co-partners, and we're very thankful for your support. Super exciting frontier. So take it away, Thomas.
So thanks for having us, and so we'll present. So we have two of us here, Carlos and myself, supporting you. And first, we want to give you an introduction, kind of into the topic. So basically, also give you some overview about kind of how AI progressed and why these foundation models could be useful, in particular for this hackathon. So basically, kind of, oops, right? Okay, here, kind of the different eras of let's say AI, kind of, let's say, till, oops.
I forgot to unmute, sorry.
Yeah, so till the 80s, let's say, there was like more like this expert systems, which were very much kind of manually crafted, symbolic, very brittle. And then we entered into the machine learning kind of era, where we used like these random forests and support vector machines, but you still had to do some kind of feature engineering. So still those models are still very powerful, but you have to think about the feature engineering. Then kind of deep learning from 2012 really outperformed, in particular on ImageNet kind of those competitions. And so here kind of the advantage is, okay, we don't have to do feature engineering, kind of the models explore kind of the patterns themselves. But the problem is kind of you need a lot of annotations. I mean, we just heard before from Sebastian, I mean, there's tons of data around Earth observation, but then still it may be tricky. You may need some ground truth, and the labeling there can still be a bottleneck. So that's kind of why recently kind of the foundation model concept came up, kind of to minimize the amount of annotations you need. I think that's handy also in a hackathon, of course. And also kind of to hopefully generalize around the globe. So basically the idea is kind of to use self-supervision on unlabeled data, such that the model kind of learns kind of the structure of the data and can then generalize with few kind of examples. I mean, in the ideal case, kind of zero-shot or few-shot learning. And maybe also here, thanks Sebastian for introducing kind of the Earth observation or remote sensing world. But maybe kind of this graphic, I like it because it kind of shows us a bit kind of the dynamics. So we have all these satellites. Okay, so here is also two blobs. The brighter, kind of the bubble, the cheaper. So NASA and ESA provide you the data for free. Some companies, they provide you higher resolution data. And sometimes if you're in a hackathon or so, you're lucky, you get a free access to certain data. But so basically kind of like NASA and ESA, they have like something like 5 or 10 meter resolution. But then kind of the others, they go down to 30 centimeter, let's say. And now interesting also is, okay, I mean, everybody of us is used to Google Maps and you have the high resolution image there, but it's static. So the cool thing here is also like you can look at it kind of on a daily or even, that's what we call revisit time. So satellites, they may observe locations on the planet, you know, several times a day or maybe every 5 days or so. So you can kind of really see how vegetation evolves, for instance, just as an overview. So basically kind of NASA approached us and said, you know, we have this wealth of data from Earth observation, Landsat missions, and then our researchers, everybody builds a known model, like maybe for floods, for wildfires, etc. But then they only are applicable for a very specific region. But typically we want to make assessments around the planet, as you also mentioned before. So then kind of these models, they don't generalize so well. So and then they said, could we dive into the topic of foundation models? So we build kind of a large model and then would fine-tune it for specific downstream tasks, biodiversity or climate issues, biomass, etc. And with the minimal amount of kind of annotations, and hopefully kind of the model could then generalize. So the first thing you have to do is kind of, you have to pre-train now the model. So that's a pre-training step. And I want to give you some insight how we performed the pre-training. Again, maybe one detail which could be or is important if you're talking about remote sensing is the following kind of, let's say typically if you have our cameras from the mobile phones or any phone, any camera, we have typically red, green and blue content from the wavelength. So this is the wavelength in nanometers. And this is, let's say, the atmospheric transmission. You can see in blue, like certain information is kind of, or certain wavelengths, they don't transmit through the atmosphere. So obviously then you cannot observe what's going on the ground. And in particular if there's clouds, right, within kind of the scenery is obscure. But you can see that, let's say, these are the Landsat, and this is the Sentinel, like the ESA satellites. They have many more bands than just red, green and blue. So they also have near infrared and shortwave infrared and so on. So for instance, to observe vegetation like near infrared and then kind of the red content can be very relevant. So basically our model we use kind of from kind of the NASA, they harmonize kind of the data set from ESA and the NASA, and we train the model on these 6 bands. So they are available kind of to play around with. And as mentioned, kind of I think near infrared and red is a relevant kind of band for you in this study. We also heard before, like if you deal with kind of those type of data, there's some artifacts you have to consider. For instance, the satellite, they go typically north-south pole orbits, and the world is rotating, and you want to kind of map out the entire world. So kind of they call them SWATs. So kind of the satellites, they take images, and they are a little bit of diagonals across the planet. So you get sometimes like blackout areas on the left. Then you have the clouds. We heard about this cloud masking. So there's like some masks provided by the satellite image providers, and then you sample typically kind of just like sub areas of unclouded observations. But then also, like when you train such a model, you know, we trained it for the entirety with samples across the globe, but there's just too much data to train a model. I mean, that's point one, and then it wouldn't make sense because there's different biomes across the planet, so different, you know, let's say urban area is only 3% of the land masses, so if you would just evenly sample across the land masses, I mean, the model would maybe be trained about forests and deserts possibly. So we kind of split up kind of the land masses into different biomes and then sampled kind of from there. So that's kind of how the model should see diverse and kind of not too and evenly distribute diversity samples. Right? Okay, so the model itself is a vision transformer, so very much considering kind of the computer vision approaches, where certain patches are masked out, so it's a masked autoencoder, and here we are considering three consecutive images. So the model also understands kind of the temporal element, and then kind of these 6 bands: RGB, near infrared, and this shortened wave infrared. So so we run kind of then the samples or the patches with the information through the encoder, and the decoder has then to reconstruct the patches which are blanked out, and we can then kind of perform here a first reconstruction task. So that's the model in the pre-training. Kind of the model is on a Hugging Face, and here you can just quickly see kind of how kind of the model, it's called Prithvi, and here you can see how like that we are using here like 3 images, 3 consecutive images from some agricultural area, so then the masking and then the reconstruction down here. So that's kind of what we, in that sense, did for you. So the model is there, pre-trained. The next step, and that's kind of what you would do in the hackathon, is kind of then to fine-tune the model. So you now need kind of labeled data, so you need labels to perform the supervised kind of learning step. And so here, as an example, we did this, for instance, for semantic segmentation to detect kind of flooded areas. So let's say here you have a flood in France, and then kind of the red areas are kind of the flooded areas. So here we have a data set kind of annotations, and kind of what we figure out is kind of, for instance, the model learns faster, so you need less epochs kind of to train the model for this very specific task, and also it can get good performance with fewer annotations. So this may be useful now in this hackathon as well. So the idea is then kind of basically we have this foundation model, and then we only have to train different types of heads to provide different tasks. So it can be binary semantic segmentation, multi-class semantic segmentation, or regression. So it could be that for here, depending on the task you're choosing, kind of that maybe regression can be relevant. So here we have like some examples already done internally, like above ground biomass estimation, or then if it's about, I think you heard before, like delineation of I think it was like a forest or canopy, yeah. Yeah, then maybe it's something like going in the direction of semantic segmentation or so. So then you would choose such a head, and Carlos will give you an intro into those. So as an example here is, for instance, in Kenya, we're in contact there with the Kenyan government, where we kind of map out and just area-wise kind of which areas are deforested and reforested. So that's kind of the light green is kind of reforested area. And then we also have this above ground biomass estimation, where we can kind of get information about how much carbon is stored in the area, and then you can look at it over time. Yep, so these are just an introduction into kind of this Prithvi, this foundation model. We have afterwards all the QR codes which are useful, and we'll post also then into the WhatsApp channel. But with this, I'd like to hand over to Carlos to talk about the notebook and give you some hands-on experience.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. So yeah, just very quickly, I guess I just wanted to show you guys a bit more practically, sort of some tools that might help you when if you think this model can be useful for you. Just some proposals and just a very quick walkthrough of what the model is actually doing. So as Thomas said, we have in Hugging Face this repository where the model is available. You have both the weights and the code, as well as a little script for how you would run inference, and this is sort of the starting point. Also in this repository, you'll find a link to this other repository where we have a little notebook which shows you what exactly the model is doing. This is kind of a very nice thing to walk through if you want to understand what the model is doing. I don't know if we have too much time now, so I won't walk through it completely, but basically it'll explain to you how you can load the model from the GitHub repository, what type of input it expects. I'm showing you the wrong notebook, actually. This is the right notebook. Yeah, so it'll show you just with basic vanilla PyTorch, sort of how you would load the model, what input types it expects, you know, when you do this masking, how it does the reconstruction. And for example, for the case, you know, we don't really care about this reconstruction as a task. We care more about different sort of downstream tasks. So we have an example for the flood model, which is also available on Hugging Face. And you can see, given an example image, you know, some example code of how you might take that image, apply a flood segmentation head, and get a result. So you can do this all with vanilla PyTorch if you'd like, and you can play around and do some surgery on the model. But another proposal that we have is actually a tool that we just open sourced super recently. So we've been using this internally to train models for a while, and now we've decided to open source it. It's called TerraTorch. For those of you who are more into machine learning, it's built on open standards, like it's built on PyTorch Lightning, as well as TorchGeo, another super useful tool if you guys are interested, like if you're using data sets which are mainly large geotiffs and you don't want to deal with the pain of how you make this into nice images you can train a model on. TorchGeo and TerraTorch can help you a lot with this. And so this TerraTorch is a proposal that we have for you guys if you want to try it. It can operate on different levels of abstraction. So for example, if you want to work with vanilla PyTorch yourself and you want to get into the model yourself, this can be something, this can operate just as a model factory for you guys. Like if you want to instantiate a model and then do it yourselves. Or if you don't want to get into the nitty-gritty details of, you know, PyTorch training loops and validation loops and how you plot metrics. With this library, the idea is you can just specify a configuration file. For example, here we have an example for you for flood detection, where you specify a few components like data, model, and training parameters, and you don't really care about training loops or code too much. And this should train a model for you and make some nice plots and get some nice insights, which might be useful for you guys in a sort of hackathon scenario where you don't want to worry about, you know, am I doing the exact right PyTorch operations? Do I have a little bug? Yeah, so as I said, we just recently open sourced it, so we're super interested in what feedback you guys might have as well, and we'll try to be very active in resolving issues or questions. And yeah, we have a link for this in the slides as well, if you guys are interested. So yeah, I think that's sort of all I had, and I'll be here today and tomorrow on the modeling side. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to help.
There are already some requests for just putting the links into the WhatsApp group. I think everyone was quite excited about TerraTorch, right? That's the name of it. Yeah, super cool. Are there any questions maybe for Thomas and Carlos? There is one.
Yeah, like in your experience, like where do you have more success? Do you see more success getting good labeled data and then training like a very, let's say, classical output head? Or do you see also really good benefits in really modifying the architecture of this output head? Where do you see more benefit gains? Is there like
You mean like in playing around with architecture and really machine learning methods?
Like let's say you have this foundation model and you want to get different outputs from it, right? You want to like detect different things. Where do you see, or maybe you don't have an answer, but where do you see the greater benefit in having good labeled data? Or do you also achieve great results with having like little labeled data, but then playing around with the architecture?
Right. I mean, the architecture is definitely super important. Not only as you change different modalities, like if you want a classification like a label, or if you want like a semantic segmentation, but also within each task, sort of the distribution of the data makes it so that the final architecture that you choose for your output head is super important. And then, as we said, like this pre-training task that we do, it alleviates a bit the need for very precise labeling data. But at the end of the day, machine learning is kind of a data game, so the data still matters. And the more you can get more labels and better labels, the better your model will perform. And this might be to answer your question, this might be the more important aspect at the end of the day.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any more questions? We have room for one more. Otherwise, no? Otherwise, Carlos and Thomas are here for the upper, so please feel free to ask many questions that come up during the talks.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
you.
Once more. So now I would like to move to the virtual mentors. So we have half right now in the audience. The participants are half in person here. Actually, it's slightly less half because most of our participants actually, and huge welcome, are actually remote right now from many universities around the world. Duke University, Yale, MIT. So thank you so much for taking your time to participate in this. And hopefully the audio is a little bit better. So because of that virtual and in-presence hackathon style, we also have half mentors being in person and half being virtual. And so I would like to welcome Nick Pawlowski, senior researcher at Microsoft Research, to give a short tutorial on Hugging Face Spaces, which we already heard a little bit. And it's going to be important because much of the hackathon projects we don't enforce, but we would encourage you guys to use Hugging Face Spaces just to make sure that there are standards, the code is open source, and we can just play around with it. And afterwards, there's also a nice API. Nick is going to present a little bit about this. So just keeping in mind, Hugging Face Space is going to be important. We're going to also update the wiki a little bit. So please make sure to learn a little bit about this. So Nick, the floor is yours. And I cannot hear you. So no, just keeping in mind, Hugging Face Space is going to be important. We're going to also update the wiki a little bit.
Yeah,
so please
it works.
Make sure to learn a little bit about this. So Nick, the floor is yours. Okay, I think I'm gonna. And I cannot.
Yeah,
hear
I see
you.
the online people say yes. Does it work in person as well, or is that?
So no, just keeping in mind, Hugging Face Space is going to be important. We're going to also update the wiki a little bit.
Yeah,
so
with the live stream
make sure to learn a little bit about this. So Nick, the floor is yours.
That's a classic thing. I assume it's working then. And
I cannot.
Yeah, I see
hear
the
you.
online people say yes. Does it work in person as well? Or is that
just keeping in mind, Hugging Face
short
Space is
introduction
going
of
to
Hugging Face Spaces. It's relatively brief because it's super simple.
I think now it's
If there are any questions here or later, I'm happy to kind of like take them.
I think it works out.
Yeah, so let's just have a bit of walkthrough. It's kind of like allows you to really get your model out there, and you can do whatever you want to be doing in kind of like your modeling, while kind of like giving it a really easy interface that other people can use online and really have a look at. So as said, kind of like you can really do whatever in your analysis. Go easy to NumPy, scikit-learn something, build your heavy machine learning, deep learning models in JAX, PyTorch, use the foundation models that have been described here, and kind of like just get a checkpoint that you can then use for inference. Do whatever you really want to do. Anything goes, go crazy, and be as creative as you can be. And Hugging Face Spaces, really allows you to kind of like build a web environment that is very easy for you to set up and then easy to use for other people. It's kind of like a GitHub repository or kind of like Git repository in the back. You just upload everything, and it just runs it in some like Docker file. Kind of like you have all the control if you want to have it, but in the easy case, and I'm kind of like going to go through an example that uses Quad.io in a second. It's literally can be as little as like 10 lines of code. So David kind of like built some, like has been involved in building some of those web apps. We've seen another one previously. Basically, what you will get is kind of like an easy interface where you have some forms you can fill in. Those kind of like some fields where you have like a web form. You can put some numbers. You can upload some images. You can have like your different checkboxes, sliders, anything that you want. You can configure that, and then look at some cool outputs. Whether it's a label, an image, a table, anything that kind of like fits whatever you really want to output. I'm just going to go through two examples here. That's kind of like a bit more complicated one, and a very easy one is actually in the Hugging Face Spaces documentation as well. It's this hot dog example where you just have a hot dog classifier. Mm-hmm. So you upload an image and it outputs labels, and it then displays those labels. So relatively easy interface. As said, what we're looking at here is kind of like you have, in the simplest case, really this really small GitHub repository. The only two things you really need is like your app and your requirements. Requirements, relatively easy for anybody that has uploaded any Python code somewhere before. This basically just tells your spaces configuration which packages to install, be it like Torch, for example, be it like NumPy, scikit-learn, something. You can put your versions in there. It will make sure that you have the correct libraries installed and you can actually use them in your app. The app is the a bit more interesting piece where actually all the logic is going to happen. And you can put everything in there, but you can also just import other code pieces from the same repository there as well. But if in this case, it's actually super easy and just fits all in here. So have a look. And what I kind of guess, I said it's 10 lines. It's actually a bit more, but not much more. And this is kind of like where Grad.io comes in. There's a different version way that you can do this is Streamlit. Grad.io seems super easy though, and it's kind of like what a lot of the examples are built with. What you really want to do is define your interface. You can kind of like look at, what are your inputs? What are your outputs? So you have different options here. Here we only had one input and output, so this is relatively easy to put in there. But basically, here we wanted to have an input that is an image, so we can say, let's take an image. Say kind of like, what do we call this? How do we get this kind of like an image? You can just upload a file path. You can actually drag and drop it. It takes care of all of that for you. And we want to output this label, which we had 2 classes, and defining this interface. We can launch it. The web app is running. It just runs this whole Python script and kind of like takes all the inputs in there. And kind of like what the interesting thing is that you can, as I said, kind of get your image here, you get your label here, it does all of that, and it does all the logic for you as well, where all the prediction really is just done in this predict function, where in this case, it's kind of like super, super easy. You have a Hugging Face pipeline. This is just an image classifier. You put an image in, and you return, in this case, a dictionary of the labels and the different probabilities of that. And this is kind of like what you also specify here, that this is what you expect as an output. You can do all sorts of logics in there, and this is kind of like what this other example is going to show you. But this is really just to visualize that you can build really cool apps really quickly and relatively easily. And it's basically no overhead for you to build a Hugging Face Spaces demo if you already have a model or anything. So what does this look like if we have a slightly more complicated app? And here you kind of like have multiple inputs, multiple outputs, and you kind of like have this button there that you kind of like want to run. How do we do this? So let's look at the inputs first. Kind of like here, rather than having this interface that you define as a single thing, and then launch, here you kind of like have this demo block that you define, and you can then add all types of things to your demo by kind of looking at your different inputs and outputs that that Grad.io provides you. So you can add like some markdown to kind of like nicely format any instructions that you might have, or explanations if it's not clear what your different inputs might be. You can here add multiple rows so that everything is nicely formatted. And as I said, you have numbers, you have those drop downs, you have checkboxes, sliders, everything that you could imagine. There is something that to really take that. And on the other side, you can build all your outputs again. There's a lot of tooling around that. You can output some like simple HTML, or like the more interesting thing in this example is kind of like Python plots are super easy to output as well. So if you just want to use like Matplotlib, Seaborn, or something to generate some cool visualizations, this will take care of displaying this on your demo, and it's super easy. How you then put all of those things together is, for example, for this plot, you say, this is our output image. And we then have this action that happens if we click this submit button that we defined here, which says, once we click this button, we will call this generate prediction function, which we're going to have a look at in a second. And we will take all those inputs that we defined. So we have the selected text AID that we kind of can put in here. We have the model that we want to use. So if you have different checkpoints, for example, you can have a drop down on the different options that you have there. And then also some like other settings that we kind of like wanted to put in. They will all be formatted in the right data type. So like this will be an integer, and kind of like drop downs will then kind of like have the string and so on and so forth. And those will be passed as inputs to your generate prediction function. And you will then have your prediction function output three outputs. One is like the text that we are looking at here, the image, and the selected text A that we kind of had. And we will then simply use those outputs that our function is generating and put them into our output boxes that we defined here. So relatively easy mix and match, and kind of like you just build your pipeline that connects the different pieces from your input, does some transformation, and then outputs them in where you define the output should be. So as said, we kind of like outputting this image here. How does this work? How do we do this? And for this, again, we have our generate prediction function. As said, we had our 4 different inputs, and we can do basically anything in that. This is relatively long code, so I'm kind of just showing the 2 important bits, in my opinion. One is you need to actually have your 4 inputs into your function, and then you kind of do all your processing. And the interesting part here is now we define our function, our figure, using Matplotlib. So we kind of like do our regular plotting. We can hear like we're actually doing like an IM show, like image show. But you can also do kind of like histograms, density plots, any type of regression that you might want to show if that's what your demo is, or your model is doing. And you then simply output your figure, your HTML that you wanted to show, and then again like this text ID. And this is being shown on your demo again. So we kind of like see this in this demo plot here. We kind of like on this left here, this is kind of like what we saw where this HTML comes in. And this is relatively easy to all put together. So the hard part is really building the model. So please focus on that, go crazy, build really cool things. And the only thing you really need to then do is kind of like have an inference function like this that you can connect to your inputs and outputs. And it's then super easy to put all of that on Hugging Face Spaces. And the documentation there is great, but if there are any questions, I'm super happy to help with that. David has some experience as well, and there are a bunch of other mentors that can help on those scenarios. Cool. As said, super easy, super low key, but it's just super easy to use. So please make use of that.
Thank you so much, Nick. So virtual applause. Are there any questions to Nick and Hugging Face Spaces? So for the machine learning track 1, everyone who's competing in track 1, we recommend to have a space because we believe this would just be the easiest way for us to inspect your model, to share with it, to play with it. It also provides, Nick hasn't shown that yet, but one of my favorite features is it provides a unified API. So you can actually, you have a REST API for free just by uploading it on Hugging Face Spaces. And that is also how we're gonna, if you're gonna be one of the lucky winners and deliver really amazing insights, how we're gonna connect your model with our platform that we're gonna launch and run in the Amazon rainforest. So that API is really crucial, so that's why we recommend to use Hugging Face Spaces. And again, Nick, thank you so much for your time. He will be available as a mentor, as will I be, for any Hugging Face questions. Thanks a lot. So, yes, Tim. How is compute done on Hugging Face Spaces is a question, Nick. Would you like to take that on?
Yeah, so there's a kind of like multi-tier system. The easiest way is kind of like you get some CPU access for free. So kind of like for easy models and kind of like all the things that the demos I shown, even though they do actual kind of like deep learning compute in the background, you just run them on CPU and it just takes a bit longer. If you want to kind of like have more complicated models and kind of like, I guess, faster compute, those are then you would need paid for spaces. But I guess I'm not 100% sure. I'm not sure how we're going to deal with that, David, where there's any assignment.
So, I mean, this hackathon is super cool because first, the best teams, they don't even have to care about Hugging Face. They can run it on a supercomputer. So if you make sure to apply for supercomputer like credits by 27th of May, you're running your stuff on a supercomputer. For the ones that are maybe not making it in time or like a little bit unsure if the supercomputer is needed, we have some credits that we're working with Hugging Face together, such that you can upgrade your space. So Hugging Face has these multiple tiers. CPU is for free, and then you can have some like basic dual core, multiple core GPUs that you can rent, and you pay basically per hour. I think what underneath Hugging Face is some kind of wrapper to either AWS or Azure. I'm not sure about that, or maybe I don't think they have their own GPUs. Maybe they have. But we're going to provide some credits as well for the teams that would like to upgrade their models. It's just not a supercomputer though, so try to get that. Any more questions? If not, we have a second track. Thank you so much, Nick. We have a second track, which is data visualization, which is for all the people who, I mean, we wanted to make sure computer science is not just AI. Nowadays, it feels like it is just AI, but definitely not. This second track is about data visualization, working with domain experts to understand, to visualize, I mean, the rainforest, which is naturally just super beautiful. And it makes sense to have technology that also tries to emphasize that. And for that, I would like to welcome Andrea Desiderato, a professor at University of Lodz, to talk about biological visualization next. And who wants to join the call here?
Hi, everyone. Okay. Just a sec. Everyone sees, right?
I need to give him a yes.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. So, yeah, I am assistant professor here in Łódź in Poland. I actually am not a coder. I am not a bioinformatician. I am a zoologist, and differently from everyone, basically, I am not analyzing huge data sets, but communities or single species and DNA, because I also work with environmental DNA. I work with evolution of small crustaceans. And today I will not randomly, but give an introduction to whomever doesn't have any experience in ecological and biological data and visualization of them. So what you usually do after any kind of sampling and once you have a data set is check if your sampling was successful. So we usually use rarefactions. Here you have the beginning, the solid line with rarefied samples, and the dashed one with the extrapolation. So here we see how much we managed actually to get. The motus richness is nothing else than species richness, but genetical. And if we check how many samples, we also check if sometimes the individuals, so the specimens that we sampled, were enough to give us the plateau. So if we actually found everything we had to have from a certain plot or a certain area. I was talking about molecular data, and well, maybe some of you know, maybe not, but molecular data are usually represented with trees. The tree of life, here we have different sets of basically the same phylogeny. And the most common is the rectangular one, but we have the unrooted and the fancier that is actually the circular, and most of the times they are represented then in extremely beautiful and colorful. Phylogenies are nothing else than cladograms or clusters. So the only difference with between clusters and phylogenies is that the data are actually genetic. So here there are models of substitutions and mutations of each base pair, each position along the sequence. But here, for example, you have something similar to an unrooted phylogeny, the one that I was showing before, but this is actually not genetic plot. This is representing the different taxa from the higher, meaning the bigger group, down to the smallest. The leaves or the gray dots here are representing species or individuals, while the thicker, the most basal points are representing the bigger groups. And here there is an important information of how many species, for example, are inside each higher level, taxonomical level. And when we are looking at samples, we have also to see how they are divided into each sample. And basically, on the right, you have a general representation of what we may have in a whole area, while on the left, you may see the same but split by each individual sample. And in each sample here, the bars are divided by the species belonging to each of these higher groups. But then in ecology, we always have weird names. And for the diversity, we always talk about alpha, beta, and gamma diversity. So, and extremely fast, and probably this is one of the most common pictures all over. So the alpha diversity represents the diversity in each sample. The beta instead is the difference between the samples, while the gamma is the general, is the regional. Here this is an extremely simple example where we see that the alpha of each sample is the same. The beta, although, is basically the distinction between them. And the gamma is simply the list of the species present in the whole black square, which is 5, because the yellow is repeated in the 3. So basically what we see here is a first representation of the alpha of each sample. But then we need to represent this difference, because in the first plot, we just see how many species are in each sample. But we would like also to see, for example, if they are shared between the samples. And so we have the chord diagrams. This, sometimes it's extremely useful, and it's used also in network analysis, where you basically see for each type of sampling, for example, which species or taxa are shared among them. We also have less attractive plots. This is actually not only a plot, this is an ordination, and is a principal coordinate analysis. Maybe better known as multidimensional scaling. And here we have basically the distinction of each sample, but this time using not the single species, but here is a calculated dissimilarity matrix below. And of course, we have the regressions, but for the regressions, we also may have the box plots, and the box plots instead are representing, of course, again, a compressed index. We have a univariate index that might be, for example, like in this case, the richness of species in each sample. Again, if we want to compare samples, this is old-fashioned. I was recently appointed as a researcher from the 90s. Yes, Venn diagrams are basic tools, are basic representation, but sometimes something basic is simply what we need. So here we see the amount of species that are shared between the different samples in a different overlap. Of course, this is a 5-sample Venn diagram, might be a bit messy. We also have heat map plots. This is a grid, and of course, the warmer the color, the higher the similarity. And again, you may see directly the cluster representing the similarity between, in this case, specimens. Talking about heat maps are usually used also for spatial representations. We saw them in previous presentations for also altitude, for example, or climate, whatever raster data. But of course, we can put also diversity information into heat maps. So for example, in this case, this is not presence absence, but it's richness of species. And this is an extremely powerful method of representation, data visualization, because we can directly pinpoint the most diverse and richest areas. Same goes, for example, instead for conservation purposes, if there are some areas most invaded. Talking about bioinvasion, I also wanted to directly to show you, for example, a network analysis where we have a mixed network between the actors, the species, and the areas, the samples, the geographic area of these species, where we see the connection between these two levels, because we have to remember that sometimes the nature needs to take into account also the humans, and bioinvasion is the greatest and most horrible overlap of these two informations, because the humans are spreaders of bioinvasion and the two go together. And this is actually one of the insights that we would like to develop for the X Prize finals, because we would like to quantify the invasion cost of each invasive species that we may detect in the finals. For whomever doesn't know, invasive species have a cost of billions per year in several countries. So the challenges for the hackathon might be first the integration among our datasets, because we will have environmental DNA datasets, so molecular data where we will detect animals from traces left into the environment, but we will have the sound, we will have the drone imaging for the plants. But so what we would like to have is also the definition of a set of visualization, and then you to write the Python scripts to then run them on Hugging Face, because, for example, I work mostly in R, and most of us in the team work with R, but we can always interact and find an overlapping area. And we were thinking actually to two versions of the final plots. One interactive to be used in the web, and another one instead that might be standing in the PDF report that we will deliver in the end. And for the PDF, we would imagine something like this, where we will have the major insights directly plotted and then the description of them. So just be creative. And of course, you don't have to follow the examples that I gave, because they are simply some of the possibilities. But I am one of the mentors too, and I am here. We can discuss, we can also exchange ideas, because you may have interesting new ideas that might be worthy to include in the general stream of everything. Some data, and I also run a scientific communication project where we sonify the DNA for purpose of divulgation. So just write to me if you are interested also in that, and hopefully see you tomorrow too.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Big applause to you virtually. Are there any questions to Andrea and on biological data visualization in general? If not, thanks, Andrea. I think that was super clear. And if not, he is available as a mentor, as are so many others. So feel free to ping him on WhatsApp or on Discord, and also for the office hour tomorrow. So this is concluding the tooling session, and we're starting right to the data deep dive now session, which we have another 4 talks. I would like to start with a very special talk, and I really hope it's actually possible, because it was a bet. So when we were in the Amazon collecting that data for you that you're going to look at and you're going to hack on, as of now, we were not alone. We were working together with the local and indigenous communities that were very critical and crucial in collecting much of the data that is possible that you will look at later today and over the next 2 weeks. So therefore, of course, we had to invite someone from the communities to also talk about traditional knowledge, indigenous knowledge. I feel this is a highly underappreciated topic in the machine learning community in general. And why I'm saying I'm not sure if it's working is because right now in Manaus, in the Amazon, it's raining. So the satellite Starlink connection might not connect properly. But Marina, are you here? Let's see.
Yes.
So Marina is from the indigenous village of Inhabe, next to Manaus. And she is one of the members of the Indigenous Council. And I have the honor to just provide you some words on the importance of traditional knowledge and how indigenous knowledge can be included into potentially the stuff we are doing right now. So Marina, the floor is yours.
I don't understand.
Can you repeat, please?
Can you repeat, please?
So
I don't understand.
Marina, the floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about how you collected the data and why it is important to integrate indigenous knowledge and traditional knowledge into the machine learning training that we have nowadays. And you can speak in Portuguese. We're all fluent, obviously. Gabriel, if you're here, you can translate maybe.
Pode falar em português se quiser para ajudar também. Como você coleta dados e como é que é importante, como você usa eles.
Okay. So, hi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marina. I'm from Mura people, I think. And me and Rodrigo is translate today because my English is very low. And then I speak in Portuguese. So, falar que a importância de eu coletar dados aqui com a tecnologia que foi me dada, né? É muito importante.
So the data collected is very important, especially because now she has many kinds of technology to collect this data.
E pra gente foi uma descoberta poder ter tantas tecnologias ajudando a proteger o que a gente consegue ainda com o nosso pequeno conhecimento.
For us, it was like a big discovery that we have tools like that to protect our environment with our knowledge that we still protect.
E esse conhecimento foi dado para a gente pela Game Forest, né? Eles trouxeram equipamentos para que a gente conhecesse e aprendesse sobre eles.
So Game Forest helped us with this technology, with sensors and other kinds of tools, so we could try and collect more data for us.
E pra gente foi um marco porque a gente conseguiu monitorar de jeito que a gente não entendia como fazer antes.
So we could start monitoring in a way that we could not understand and we could not imagine how to do before.
E com esses sensores que eles nos disponibilizaram, tem audio mock, like this one, que é o meu preferido.
So one of them is the recording sensors, the audio mock that records audio, which is also my favorite.
Porque a gente entendia que os barulhos da floresta eram importantes, mas a gente não tinha como monitorar isso.
We knew that the sounds of the forest were really important, but we didn't have the proper way to monitor it.
Mas agora, com o conhecimento e o equipamento que foi nos dado, a gente consegue fazer isso.
But now, with these tools, this technology, and the new way to use these technologies.
So, I think maybe that's the best we can do.
E a importância disso é que, pela primeira vez, a nós com equipamentos que a gente realmente pudesse usar e tocar eles.
For us, it was really great because it was the first time that people came to us bringing this kind of technology, and we could really try it, really use it. Before, it was nearly impossible. It was big knowledge.
Porque a gente entende de muito conhecimento, mas trazer isso para dentro de uma aldeia e poder fazer com que as pessoas realmente entendam aquele equipamento é muito importante.
So for us, it's really important bringing this kind of technology, and most important is teaching us how to use it, because it was not so many difficult to bring them here.
E também eles ofereceram para a gente a oportunidade de monitorar com drones.
They also gave us the opportunity to monitor our area, our forest area, with drones, so we could monitor like companies installing basements,
Então, para gente que sobrevive e vive inteiramente o que é a floresta, essas tecnologias são muito importantes.
So for us that we live by using the resources of the forest, these tools, these technologies were very, very important.
So Marina, just quickly interrupt here. We're here with a lot of participants who are gonna hack on the data that you collected, the audio data, the drone data, and here in this room alone are roughly 30 to 40 people watching, and online we have 80 people watching right now. What would you like to say to the people who are watching right now? How should they use the data, and how should they, when they train like AI on the data, integrate traditional knowledge, indigenous people into the data? What is it that maybe you can provide as a mentor as well? I hope the connection is.
Agora é a parte de ter necessidade de ser usado com IA, como vocês estão hoje.
A gente está usando hoje a tecnologia.
Let's see. It makes me appreciate how we're having good internet, and this is just like normal, right? Like this is, yeah. Let's see. Give it, I would say, 30 more seconds.
So it's really important. Aside collecting the data is storing that data and storing our knowledge using, for example, the Taina bot, which is a chat AI that we insert the data, insert our local stories, the local knowledge about medicine, leaves, the health of the trees, and making a big database.
E pra gente, isso era somente feito de forma oral, não tínhamos nada escrito.
Before, it was kind of passed by generations, only by speech. A father passes to his son and so go on. Now we have opportunity to store this in a new technology.
E apesar de que muitos de nós indígenas não sabemos escrever o português, mas sabemos falar, ela também reconhece a fala da gente. E também ela coloca isso como no banco de dados dela, sem que a gente precise se aprofundar tanto na escrita.
So, another great thing is many of the indigenous people don't know how to properly write in Portuguese. So the opportunity to just talk, just speak to the AI chat and tell the story, tell the knowledge. It's a good way to involve everyone.
Marina, thank you so much for your input on this. So I know you're on your cellular Wi-Fi right now, so really, like, huge thank you for you making the time, connecting, and trying to give us the message of the importance of traditional knowledge. So I would like to just say thank you from the room as well.
I don't understand.
It's raining a lot. We couldn't hear. Could you please repeat?
So just a big thank you for you taking the time, calling from Manaus while it's storming and the satellite internet connection is not working. So thank you so much. And yes, I think we would move to the next talk. So maybe I should turn my camera on so I can just wait for it. So we're moving to the next talk. But before that, I will just mute you quickly. And just tell you a little bit also why, like what she said, is so important. So for example, when we are collecting this data is unlabeled and it's completely raw. And when we are collecting this with the indigenous people, they know exactly what sample position we have to choose, where to effectively get the most impact, right? They know exactly where to install the sensors. They also know how to label these. They provide indigenous names for it. For example, one of my favorite audio clips that you can find on the wiki is something that Marina actually collected. It's a bioacoustic of a howling monkey. And it sounds scary AF when you listen to it first, but she was able to just identify it on the spot, tell me exactly how this looks like. So the local communities are amazing when it comes to identifying, understanding, and providing all this knowledge that we basically, we're just looking at 0 and 1s, right? So we need to understand the context of this. So it's really important to co-design this technology with you, and thanks again for your time. And she is available as a mentor. One of the hack upgrades that you have is actually just to chat with her, potentially when you collect data, when you want to work on the data, just to provide that indigenous local community knowledge on your data set to give you and your model a cutting edge, because it will really improve any training, any kind of labeling, if you have the context as well. So we've seen this a lot in many kind of unsupervised settings. When you provide more metadata, it will improve it. And this is really a cutting edge that I don't think a lot of hackathons can provide. So take this upgrade advantage to your heart. So next, thanks Marina. Next, we would like to move on to Johan from the Crowder Lab, who will present from local field-based data to global base layers. The Crowder Lab has been very generous, donating some of their secret sauce to this hackathon. And I would just give it to you.
Can I plug my computer in somewhere?
Oh, no,
what?
you cannot.
Yeah,
that would break the live stream. But you can just join the Google Hangout. You should also have a Google Calendar invite.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And if you join that, you can just share. Yeah. That's the simplest.
I think you need to.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Nice. You can just restart, don't worry. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, sure. Oh. I need to open it. 1 minute, almost there.
At least we don't face a thunderstorm right now, so it's all good.
It turns out it's hard enough from here.
We face completely different problems.
Should we do a break?
Yeah, maybe.
think everyone is very.
We can also do now a break now.
We can
It's
do
fine.
it now.
Maybe
Break.
it would make sense now.
Yeah.
But then it's fine.
Hello, dear live stream. You guys are ready for a 5-minute break, maybe? Yeah. Hello, live stream. We're doing a 5-minute break, so I'm gonna provide like a fancy cover image for the live stream. We will be back in 5 minutes.
Just want to have it ready. It's fine. It's good. I think it's an hour is a bit long.
Yeah, it is. It is. I have no idea how I'm gonna. My God, where's my studio mode? I want. Hey, really, really great. Yes. Thanks. I really want to talk with you about the paper. Yeah. Yeah, I'm here also. So thanks a lot. No worries. You're Sarah, right? You're Sophia.
Sophie.
Hey, Sophie. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, so I mean, there are these two types of methods, like machine learning related, and the other's like data visualization. It seems to be less machine learning related. I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, maybe it's not explicit. And then there are the meta challenges, but I'm not really like I was told it's optional, but.
It's optional. So what says in the wiki, maybe it's not really well explained, is that up, like if you scroll up here, we are open to all ideas, right? And basically only when you have no, like, maybe you're not sure what to tackle on, what should you work on, we have provided these mentor challenges that will dedicate you to a direct mentor. Right, if you decide to take a mentor challenge, you will have a one-on-one mentor. Otherwise, if you're still unsure but you want to have some guidance, there's the insights ideas, which is a collection of roughly 30 insights. It's below the mentor challenges. That will provide you with some ideas on what could be also tackled on. Really, we are open for all the ideas. A hackathon is really like no strings, no boundaries attached. The product itself, the only limitation is we recommend to run it on Hugging Face spaces. There's a small tutorial that we gave just now. I think you just missed it. Hugging Face spaces is like an open source Docker container that you can just push things in, and then we'll run it like in an encapsulated way. And then, yeah, that's...
Do I need to have the GPU, like the Trav installed?
So, no, it's all virtual. It's all virtual, yeah.
Okay.
And we are here to help in case you're stuck. But I think the most important part is to find a team. So because like hacking alone is not as cool as hacking together. And then we have the mentors ready to support you guys.
How do I find a team?
We're gonna have after the sessions like small like corners of interest, and then you guys just get together while you guys eating some snacks. Yeah. You have a question?
Dynamic team finding.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I had written down some questions
Yes.
Regarding the organizational part of the
Yes.
hack. So if I might just run this by you.
Of course.
quickly. Are there any limits on team size?
No,
Like
there's no limit.
minimum, maximum.
Well, we recommend 3 to 4 people. This is kind of the optimal size that we initially had, but like it's really, for example, remote, because so many are remote, we have no limits on team size remote. We recommend 3 to 4 here.
Yeah.
And we'll just mention it.
I had some experience with 4 people, with 5 people in hackathons, in-person hackathons. And for partly remote hackathons, it's likely going to be more optimally.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I love hackathons, but like the verse. Oh, 1 second. Hi, Trini. Okay, sure. Yeah. Sarah needs to pick up her phone.
Sarah needs to pick up her phone.
Yeah. I tell Trini tells me.
I have time to
Yes.
How often does this happen? Is it like yearly?
No, it's the first time ever.
It's the first time.
It's linked to 2 events. the summit which we did last year, which is the first time we're trying to put
Hi.
AI environment together. And the summit is linked to the X Prize, which is a 5-year competition
There's random too.
I think for the first time in like any
How's it going?
history,
Good,
the finals
good. I mean,
of this
it's
race was
intense
X
now.
Prize. So that basically
It's the end
ignited
game,
this idea of
Yeah.
hackathon. So we
So
are
glad
really
that you've been able to
I hope we can repeat
Yeah.
it again because I think the data is
decent
super
amount of
cool.
time.
But
Yeah, of course.
it's
It
a
depends.
different-
It depends on
crazy
yeah.
amount of things.
Well,
It's gonna be exciting.
the whole
Yeah.
idea of
You,
we cannot provide any cash prizes,
are you
but we
also
can provide something like much
going to
cooler.
be involved in
Your
anything
code
with the
deployed in the
costs?
Amazon rainforest. And that's because
Well,
of
not.
the final.
Yes, I mean I'm kind of involved in everything. I won't be there. At least I'll try to not to be there. That's not my shtick. No, I'm pretty sure Tom will go for sure.
I
And
got an email from Ian about
Ian.
like a nomination letter.
Oh.
Who else wants to be in this letter?
Oh yeah.
I'm planning to go.
Where is it at?
No, I totally get it. So the idea really is threefold.
Oh,
First,
nice. Better than Sharm el Sheikh.
I'm in Brazil and
first,
Yeah.
Colombia.
ignite the next generation.
Offsetting.
Yeah.
Like it.
No, I guess I'll be involved in preparing stuff, but I can do other stuff better.
And are you at Restore and
No, I'm fully fully lab engaged. I'm actually one of the maybe the only one or one of the very few people with a permanent contract because I'm on the technical track, so users was easily yeah. And so I'm not on the academic track. I'm assistant, whatever it's called, which for me works great. Yeah. But it also means I can work on everything where help's needed, and that sometimes a lab. Right now it's also a bunch of restore things, seed as well, the complexity metric. Yeah, and I like that. There's a lot of things going on that I'll find. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds complex, but good.
Yeah, it's juggling priorities as well.
So glad you got it.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. As of September, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Stability, man. I don't even have a permanent.
Right. Tom doesn't have one either.
Tom doesn't.
No. I wish he did. I think his is close. I think it's been closed for a year and a half, but there's.
I mean, we have so many people.
So I think the decision is going to be made soon.
I mean, hopefully with less issues.
So you have to hand in everything soon.
Yeah. Finished.
Oh, you.
I mean, I just have an ERC. It's really cool. So it was only a 5-year contract. I always knew I was on the show.
I mean, it's kind of limited and phrase. It's really good.
Exciting.
So a lot on this prize.
Yeah.
I think several of us need to benefit from the prize money.
Yeah.
First job. You have to get permanent jobs.
Yeah.
If you measure from
you might never get started.
It's been about 10 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Let's get it all in. Yeah, sorry for that. No. It's just a very, it's actually I think I put the 6 months animals tend to prefer like water and dying in the desert, I guess. It was expected. It was really nice, and actually that's the thing. Like it was only no. So this part was like to use like data actually a software called Trap Tiger, which does like what's finding species of information based on actually like deep learning. And it was like more or less working, so it's not team but then the main part was like and I actually felt I also had to like the special features like that we had about the environment, like the vegetation cover, the water in the villages, things like this. And this is gonna realize that
What do I do with my audio? Am I on this audio or?
No, you're on your audio, and then it will just go through. It should be really simple in the sense that I have nothing. I even turn off my audio here, so I cannot hear you, and then you can just speak
So
normally.
I unmute.
So you just, yep, you unmute. Nice.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, really excited about this talk.
Extremely interesting, like hypothesis and everything to the models. Like their knowledge is super but then, you know, they use yeah, and I just and I was actually curious to see if any of you
All right. I did. I did not. Oh, that one's muted. All right. If someone can't hear me online, please shout some way or the other. Hi all. Thanks for making it back after the break. I am Johan. I work in the Crowder Lab at ETH Zurich, just across town, as a data scientist, and part of my work focuses on creating global maps from observational data, combining those with spatial features. And some of these data we have pre-processed and generated for you to use in the hackathon as input sources for the models you're building. And a few of the previous talks has focused more on the newer age deep learning modeling approaches, whereas we used, I guess, maybe the more classical machine learning, mostly random forest, to create our models, because we found them to be more interpretable in the ecological sense. But generally the approach would be the same, whether be it deep learning or random forest or linear modeling if you want. So Biogeography 101, it's basically the study of the geographic distribution of all forms of life. So that could be the tree density, the amount of carbon in soils, the relationship of biodiversity with climate, for example. And these global maps are pivotal in making decisions for conservation efforts, in restoration efforts, and also climate change adaptation. And we can model basically anything we want as long as it makes sense. And it could be presence-absences of species. There could be a classification model or probability models, whether a species could occur somewhere or couldn't occur there. Regression models would be mapping continuous values. So that could be the number of trees per hectare, for example. We can do current and future predictions, so changing the climate scenarios for current and future predictions. And we can also do potential distributions if we, for example, remove the influence of humans on a given area. Just to give a quick overview of a few maps that we've made in the past years, we've mapped the number of trees on the globe, so it also to about 3 trillion trees. Annual soil temperature, mycorrhizal fungi richness, so it's below ground animals, microbes, the potential of carbon stored in forest on a global scale, the invasion probability of invasive species in forests, nematode density in soils, so those are small little worms living in soils, the decomposition rate of plant material, forest structure, and even ocean cyanobacteria, so it's not limited to just soils either, or terrestrial pixels. So how would you get started in doing a model like this? First, you would need a data set. And a global scale model you would need a global scale data set. So you have data that's mostly, in our case, usually it's biased towards Europe, the US, and maybe Asia. Regions in South America and Africa are usually undersampled. Sorry?
Are you muted?
No, I'm not. That's the screen. Mine is on. So you have a data set of observational data with locations, so we know where these samples were taken. We combine that with spatial features, so those would be global maps of environmental data. That is thrown together into a big regression data set, and the model is trained on this, and which is then applied to classify an image. A very short note on public data sources you could be able to use in the hackathon. For example, iNaturalist is over 180 million observations of presences of different species, plant species, birds, butterflies, you name it. GBIF is even bigger with 3 billion observations of all kinds of species. There's a whole bunch of published literature, of course. There is big repositories like Data Dryad, Zenodo, and a bunch of others. And the wiki has also listed a few data sources, which you could also use. Then a quick note on preparing training data. As has been mentioned earlier today, your model is only as good as your data is. If your data is junk, your model might be a bit better than the data, but it's still not the best model you could possibly make. So make sure your data is properly organized, and you've removed outliers, you've checked your coordinates, and this is something that I've actually done just a few weeks ago, and I must admit it's a very dumb mistake. I swapped X and Y, the coordinates, and you end up with a map like this. If you don't check the things on the map, you won't see this in your training data set. The model will be predicting something, but it's complete nonsense, obviously. So always double check. Never take anything for granted, because everyone makes mistakes. Then some notes on how to select these spatial features. So mostly for a random forest model, you do some feature engineering. For deep learning, it's a different story, but I'll focus on random forest here. You want to select the features that make sense for your output predictor. So if you're modeling soil temperature, for example, you don't need to take into account wind speed at 10 kilometers height. It's probably, there might be correlation between the two, but it's most likely a spurious correlation. So you want to take into account the variables that are listed in the published literature, for example, or that are known from mechanistic models that make a direct connection with your response variable. You can classify these features in, stand back. How to get these? So you select the variables you want to include, and then you reproject them to the same projection as scale. That's an important step. If they're not unified projection, the output model will be, or the output image will be janky as well. You store everything as a single image or tiles if you want. Then there's 5 main classes of environmental data we have provided. The first and foremost is climate. So these are temperature, precipitation, and derivatives. Soil variables, so these would describe organic carbon, for example, or the texture of soils. Vegetation, things like productivity or NDVI. Topography, things like elevation or soil, the texture of larger pixels. And human disturbance, because humans obviously have a big influence on ecological attributes. Altogether, for right now, there's 358 layers available in the assets for the Eco Hackathon. So these would be the soil properties, the vegetation. Canopy height is an important one, obviously. Topography, and human disturbance, and climate. A short note on the climate. So these would be temperature, precipitation, and derivatives, but also wind speed, solar radiation, water pressure, and 8 different future climate scenarios, or 3 climate scenarios in different future time periods. And just to give an example of how you could potentially use this is to make a future prediction. What you essentially do is you train a model on the current conditions and you swap in your prediction stage the climate variable for the future prediction or future scenarios. So a annual temperature of 12 degrees here in Zurich would be swapped with 12 degrees plus 1.5 degrees in a future climate scenario. And you do this for every pixel and you get a future prediction. So this is something we've done for 12,000 different tree species. And one example of this is Abies alba, which is a European silver fir. You can see this basically in every forest here in Europe. And we have around 27,000 observations after cleaning for the greater area of Europe. And we selected 9 different variables to predict. This was done based on a bunch of mechanistic models. We could have included more, but this was the set we used. So some describing in blue the climate scenario, climate conditions, vegetation conditions, and soil conditions. And this then generates a training data set of the 9 variables times 27,000 observations plus a number of absences we added in as well to basically say where zeros would occur. And can I do this?
You can. You're sharing a tab right now, right?
Yes, I'm going to present something else now.
Mm-hmm. Just reshare this thing.
No.
You have to stop sharing your other thing. It's a little bit annoying. Sorry for that.
Technology.
Yeah, and click on share. Yeah. Nice. And now you can just switch to the tree.
Beautiful. Thank you, David. So these would be our observations where ecologists have seen this species, identified it, and georeferenced their observation. Applying that model would create a probability score, something like this. Yellow means higher probability. Everything below a value of 70% is masked out. Swapping that for a future prediction would give a fairly stark contrast. So there's large swaths of Europe where the climate conditions in the future would not be places where this species naturally occurs. And information like this is very important for example, tree planting campaigns. Selecting a species or a number of species to plant in a certain area, you want to make sure that species can live there in 50 or 100 years. If the climate conditions are going to change that drastically for a given area, and you're planting a tree that's probably going to die in 30 years, you might want to select another species. Do you have another one really quickly? I don't. No. No, that's all. Thanks.
Nice. Thank you so much also for sharing that data for the hackathon. I know this is something that is very valuable for you and your work. Is there any questions from the audience?
Yeah, like for the size of data is quite huge. So when doing feature engineering, like do you first build like small models, and what kind of data then you use? Like what size of the data you use? Like how much data do you usually use?
Well, I must admit, if ecologists talk about big data, it's not big data for computer scientists. Like the size of data we're talking about is in the order of gigabytes to maybe terabytes. It's not petabytes. So I can run this on my computer locally and things are fine. 27,000 observations, maybe doubled with absences, is still a manageable amount of data. Plus, we usually do this on the tabular data set, so that's make things easier as well. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just curious, in your experience of building models for climate-related predictions, you said like you dropped some of the variables. You decided to use like a set of these variables that you showed there. Did you ever drop a variable that you deemed very, very important, but you dropped it because of a lack of data, or because it is very hard to obtain this data in the first place?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yes. Ideally, you want to include the variables that are known to be the most important. But if a model like this would only work on full observation, so if there's NAs in any of the rows, you would drop that entire column. So that has happened before. The nice thing about these global maps is that they're spatially continuous. So if there's an observation on a terrestrial location, we will have data for it. Maybe not from Antarctica, but for most of the terrestrial places, we do have observations because they're all model data, right?
Yes. For the provided 300 big number layers, which is quite amazing, what is the spatial resolution of the layers?
So good question. These are not, they're all on different scales. In our group, we have everything reprojected to 30 arcseconds, so that's about 900 meters at the equator, because that's the scale that makes most sense for 30 arc. That makes most sense for our applications, but a number of these variables are natively available at 30 meters or 250 meters, or sometimes even there's one map that's at 1 meter resolution. But I've generated everything at the same their native resolution. So that's a step that still has to be taken. I can also provide the reprojected ones, but there are a few layers that would lose resolution by providing that at a unified scale. Yeah.
And if there is a time series involved for resolution, or that they are static?
Yeah, so there's a few time series that would be available, so like temperature, precipitation, and DVI. Right now, these are all aggregates across a number of years. But if you have special requests, just please ask me, and I can relatively easily generate them. Yeah. Yeah.
How did you identify the most important features?
Yeah, there's a number of ways you could do this. You could look at just straight up correlations between, and look at the fit between the variables and the regression, the response variable. If you want to go a bit more data heavy, you can fit the model and look at the ones that are not included in the model or least important, and drop the ones that end up at the bottom, and do that iteratively until you have a set of variables that makes most sense. What we usually do is somewhere halfway that is by doing a principal component analysis or some kind of dimensionality reduction to cluster things into, say, 20 clusters, and from every cluster we select one that ecologically would make most sense. For example, the temperature variables, there's 11 in the bioclimatic layer composite. They basically all describe the same patterns. So the closer you go to the equator, the warmer it gets, and the closer it pulls, the colder. And the warmest month is also in tropical regions, and the coldest month is also in the more polar regions. So there's a number of features that have autocorrelations between the two of them, or between many of them perhaps. And some models do care about that, and some models are a bit less sensitive to it. Yeah.
If there are no more questions, thank you so much once more. Moving from global ecological layers to global satellite layers, Planet Labs is here today. For the ones who are in remote sensing, this company is like clearly obvious, providing wonderful data on a daily basis, 3 meters resolution. And I'm very, very excited to welcome Miguel here to provide a talk, a quick introduction on the satellite data that Planet Labs provides for the hackathon, as well as how you can best access it. Miguel, please take it from here. So you need to join the, because we're live streaming, you need to join the calendar invite and just share yours. And I should have unmuted myself when I introduced you. Okay.
Just this,
What's up here?
oh yeah.
And then I'll have to invite you in. Yep. Nice. And you can just unmute yourself.
Ah, okay.
That should work.
Okay. And I guess should I unmute myself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Miguel from Planet Labs, and I wanted to give you today an introduction into our company, what we do, and the type of data that we are capturing every single day throughout the world. And part of it is actually going to be available to you, part of a specific program called NICFI, but more on that later. So just for you that I believe most of you are not maybe too much into remote sensing or Earth observation, at Planet Lab, I mean, more of a sales pitch here, but our mission has been, since the moment it was founded by the founders, to image the complete Earth in a single day. And this has been a capability that it didn't exist before, and allows to monitor changes at a scale that has never been possible. Of course, the Landsat program, the Copernicus have been there providing the fundamentals of Earth observation in the scientific community, but the scale of monitoring that we can do by monitoring the Earth every single day is just a different scale, and you will see that, especially with the data that you're gonna have access the NICFI layers. So yeah, we do that, and just to give you an overview of what's behind the scenes of this data that you're gonna be working, we have two main constellations nowadays. One that we call the Super Dove, or the Dove, the Planescope constellation is formed by the Dove satellites. Those are the ones you can see on the right side, and they are the size of a shoebox, literally. I mean, they are not very big. If you think of traditional Earth observation satellites, they're rather large. But yeah, just because of using state-of-the-art technology available commercially, we were able to build what I believe is, after Starlink, the biggest constellation, or the second biggest constellation worldwide, and for sure the biggest in terms of Earth observation satellites. Those satellites, the Dove ones, are the ones that are going to be powering the layers, the data you're going to be using in this hackathon, but also be aware that we have very high resolution imagery, so that would go sub-meter pixel size, and more to come in the future. If you are within the scientific community, we have hyperspectral data coming that's going to allow you to monitor greenhouse gases also throughout the world. So yeah, the whole approach we are providing here for this hackathon is to give you access to NICFI data. NICFI is an initiative of the Norwegian government, actually, who is funding this program, and is making available for free those base maps that go from 30 north to 30 south in latitude, and they are available, as you can see, worldwide. So you will see now, I'll do a little demo on how you can actually access the data and zoom in and see that, and how you can very easily change from one month to the other and start to see changes. It really depends on what you're going to be doing, and tomorrow I'm very excited to see what applications you have in mind, because there's a lot of things that can be monitored, and the data is there. There's no, I mean, it's clear there is an impact, especially if you go to tropical forest, and we can see that very clearly through satellites. And if we add this temporal resolution that we have with Planet, it's just so obvious that something is happening there. Yeah, so if we focus into the NICFI program, there's framing the access that you're gonna have. As I mentioned, we're gonna be using these Dove satellites, but also you will have access to an older generation of satellites called RapidEye that's gonna give you this historical perspective. It was mentioned before, you have Landsat, you have Copernicus, you can go as back in time as the 70s, let's say, in a easy way at that resolution. With RapidEye, you cannot go that back in time, but still gives you this historical perspective. Again, it depends on what you want to do, which models you want to train, which applications you want to power with the data, but the archive is there. Yeah, so some words on the technicalities of the satellite, or the data at least. So you're gonna be working with products that are 4-band, so it's gonna have the typical RGB and near infrared. So for those of you that are maybe new to remote sensing in general, that's gonna be the typical RGB bands that form a true color composition, and the near infrared, where vegetation is very active in its response, is gonna give you a lot of insights of how vegetation is behaving, and especially through time with the different images we take. The pixel size we are talking here is around 3 meters pixel size. So again, a resolution that for, let's say, a middle-sized area of interest is, I believe, more than enough, or yeah, just as good as you can get. And yeah, some words on the constellation. Those are around 180 satellites that are, as I said, very small and just orbiting in these sun-synchronous polar orbits and acquiring the data every single day. Yeah, the Rapid Eye, again, this is a retired constellation, and it's just going to be sitting there as archive data or historical data that you can look at. So the base maps, what is it the data you're going to have access to? What we do at Planet within the scope of the NICFIP program is that we take every single acquisition that we capture every single day. Here we're talking about petabytes of data. And we select the best pixel for a particular time of interest, right? In this case, a month. So if you think of your area of interest, every pixel we, in an automatic way, because to be honest, this is an automatic process, we select the best pixel, right? And what is that? Usually it's the one that has the less cloud cover or that is affected the less by atmospheric distortions and so on. So we can produce a monthly image of the best quality or as much as possible. There are challenges, especially depending on the time of the year. In the end, it's optical data, so clouds are there, and that's just pure physics. But yeah, throughout the month, most of the times, even in challenging areas, at some point you're going to have a free acquisition, or chances are that at least something will happen. And because we have this constellation of satellites acquiring every single day, we can actually deliver or create this type of mosaics that otherwise would just not be possible. You have the plan B of using SAR. That just goes through a different path in remote sensing and gives you a different type of insights compared to optical. Both can be put together, and I would advise you also to do that. But yeah, just to put the work, the framework there. So the data you're gonna have access to, we differentiate it in two levels: what we call a visual base map and a analytical one. The visual one would be just a picture of the situation, right? So it's gonna contain the RGB bands, right? So the red, green, and blue channels of the electromagnetic spectrum with which we create an image, and then just by looking at it visually, you can interpret what's happening. Think of it as how your algorithms or how whatever you're gonna do is gonna interpret the signal that's coming from the data. So you don't have additional spectral information in this particular product. On the other hand, you also will have access to the surface reflectance, right? So that's just the layer that contains that near-infrared band that is key to monitor vegetation, to drive indices like NDVI that was mentioned right before, and so on. For the cadence and how often we are producing the data and how often you can access it, as I mentioned, those are monthly base maps, right? So every single month we create a new update into the catalog, and we can go as back as September 2020 if we look at the monthly mosaics, right? We can go a little bit before in time, but then it's not gonna be monthly, but just biannual. The reason for that is that the constellation was not ready, right? So you need X number of satellites to really be able to capture enough data to do a monthly mosaic. And as we ramp up our operations, takes a little bit of time. Yeah, so you will be what we call a level 1 user. And again, we can go into the technicalities of this later in the session when you maybe think a little bit of what you want to do, and I can guide you through the bureaucracy of the program, let's say. But yeah, you will be level 1 users, right? So you will have access to these visual and surface reflectance maps to do your work. The question here is if you need the data and at which scale you need the data, and that's gonna lead you to, okay, how do I access the type of volume that I need? If it's just a single image, we will go one way. If you need the full archive, if you need dense time series and so on, then we need to automatize that a little bit. So yeah, you will have access to that potentially, and I guess this is something we can discuss. We could put you into what we call the level 2, and the main difference here is that we would give you access also to the underlying scenes that we use to create the base maps. So if I give you a monthly mosaic, you don't know exactly from which particular date within the month that image is coming from. And depending on what you are doing, that might be key information. Because if you're tracking, for example, deforestation in a tropical forest, and you want to target the specific time of when that happened, it's good to know it on a monthly basis, but it's better to know it on a daily basis, right? So we could, if there is a use case strong enough for this, we could support that and give you access to, okay, this pixel in my mosaic, when is it coming from, and then you can, well, just maybe not for the algorithm part, but maybe just for the final impact of your application, that can be key. Yeah. Yeah, some technicalities on the data. I think if you are new to remote sensing, again, this might be like first time for these words. But yeah, just I want to pass the message here that data is ready to use. So we do all the pre-processing, and we deliver it in a way that it can be ingested into your algorithms, into your pipelines straight ahead. So this typically in this community includes atmospheric correction for to remove the effects of the atmosphere, normalization. So we're working with a bunch of different sensors, so we need to make sure they're calibrated and the pixels are basically comparable through time. That's something key and very important to go through time. Yeah, so just wanted to take some minutes today to give you a sense of how easy it is to access this data. I mean, it might seem, I don't know, to me, I'm already used to satellite imagery, so for me it's very easy to go for it, but maybe if it's the first time, it's just accessing a website with the right credentials, and that's it, right? It's nothing more than that. So we will go through how to create an account. There's a dedicated website where you need to subscribe, and I'll give you the links for that, so no worries. But basically, at some point, you're going to reach this platform, right? You log in, and what you see here are the actual base maps. As you can see, they are clipped to the specific area of interest within the scope of the NICFI program, right? So this is what Norway wants to support. The focus is the tropical forests. We have global base maps and many others, but for the scope of this hackathon, that's what we have. And yeah, this is at its full resolution, right? So I believe you will, to be honest, I don't know if you're working on a particular continent or not. That may be something for you to define. But yeah, if at some point you're gonna use this data or you find it useful, just know that you're not limited by the where in this sense, right? So we can just zoom in as much as we want. There are some hotspots of deforestation that are very well known in tropical forests. And well, as you can see, we have no clouds, consequence of doing this mosaicing with the different images. And on the left panel, you can just go as much back in time as data is available, right? So something that I think is very nice is just to do a quick comparison between April here, and let's just go a couple of months before, and very easily we can see, I mean, if I'm lucky enough, I was trying before to find an area, but yeah, we can just find, new areas that are being deforested, legally, illegally, as part of the country's policy or not. That from the image we don't know. That would be a multi-criteria analysis, but it is very obvious it is happening. So if you link that with other layers that, for example, give you, okay, what's the extent of a protected forest, what's the extent of an area that should be taken care of from the authorities, and you see that it's happening, then it's a matter of scaling your models to do these detections as automatic as possible, so that you can trigger the alerts and well, just take some actions or pass the message to whoever has to make that action happen. So yeah, this would be an easy way to see the data. Of course, we can automatize this, or we can make this an input into your pipelines depending on what you want to do, right? So we have APIs, we have specific plugins in dedicated software like QGIS, like Google Earth Engine. This data set is also there, so you can, if you're more used to that, you can pull it directly from there and write your scripts. So there are a variety of things, and it really depends on your skills, on what you want to do, and happy to discuss that maybe with more detail later today or tomorrow. So yeah, everything basically, I'm gonna send you the links. We have a very rich documentation, and I just want to finish my little speech here by saying that I think this is a great chance. I have access to a bunch of resources in terms of data, teams, mentors, and yeah, I think there's some effort on your side to be made, right, to find how to combine everything together. But I think you are right now in the right environment to give this chance, to give it a chance. And yeah, I'm very excited. And at this, talking to my colleagues back in Planet, I think we are very excited to see what comes out of this and see what we can do later. So yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you so much. Any questions from your side?
Um,
website where you were comparing the different maps, there was something I was wondering, the lightly colored areas, why were they so perfectly rectangular?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's just how they deforest. I think this is maybe it has to do with the exploitation of the land, right? So I'm sure it makes more sense to them to just manage the land in that way. So deforestation can happen for agricultural expansion. There are different driving forces. So depending on what they want to do and how they are managing that deforested area afterwards, then they go for that. So you see, they are all connected and so on. Something that I think is also a very good application here is, if you come up with an algorithm that detects roads. Roads are a proxy to deforestation, right? So you can see here in April, there's already roads appearing here. So this clearly is going to be deforested at some point. Yeah. So if this is in a managed area, okay. But if it's in the middle of a protected forest, then that gives you an indication to legal logging or selective logging. That's something also that happens, that usually when illegal deforestation happens, they go for the most highly valuable trees. So with this level of spatial resolution, we can actually detect that very tiny change in a untouched forest and say, hey, something has happened. So it's just, the data is there. This is a solved question for many years already. Data is there. What is not truly solved is how to make sense out of the petabytes of data that are being produced nowadays every single day.
To maybe add on top of that, so deforestation has several kind of layers. This one is most likely a cattle farm in Brazil. So, and how they deforest, I was in Paraguay many years ago. They chain together 2 trucks with a long metal chain, and they drive parallelly. And that's why it removes this in like a straight line, because that's the maximum amount of weight. You don't burn it, because it's uncontrollable. Basically have a middle steel chain, and you drive the 2 trucks. And that's why you can create these really, really straight lines. And it's actually, as sad as it is, a great machine learning task, as Miguel said, because we can really clearly see, depending on the pattern of what you see here, what is the land use that is specifically linked to it, because selective logging would look very different than this. Any more questions? Yes.
Even if you generate kind of the cloud-free maps here for a month, could there be areas like where you still would have clouds the entire month, and do you provide a cloud probability?
Yeah. So yeah, I was as you can see, I took August and April, right? I know my data. So yeah, definitely. It's optical data, and we do our best to get rid of clouds. But sometimes there are some areas in the world that have persistent cloud cover, and that's just how it is. With these products, at Planet, when we deliver our imagery or base maps, we create a pixel classification by default that tells you, okay, this is a cloudy pixel, and the probability of our model tells it's 0.9. With NICFI layers, you don't get that, because we try our best to remove. We make use of those scene classifications on our end to produce a ready-to-use product. So we don't want people to just spend time on something that we can do in advance. So for these NICFI basements, we don't, but for imagery, yes, we provide that. So yeah, we can see here, there's just areas that it's challenging. And the tropics is really not the best place for cloud-free imagery, but putting a month gives you higher chances.
Are you also providing the quarterly basements?
So for NICFI, we provide the monthly. If you go back in time, you will have those quarterly.
The chance is higher that there's no.
Yeah, but when you do this temporal mosaics, it's a bit tricky, right? Because yes, by increasing into, let's do a 4-month time of interest, then yes, super nice. But then the misalignment or the heterogeneity in pixel values just increases a lot, right? So you might have a pixel that is deforested, and next to it one that is fully forested, because in the 4 months that was the pixel selection. So there is a trade-off always to be made there, right?
But
so
it's part of NICFI.
Part of NICFI will be monthly.
Only monthly.
Monthly, and back in time, if you go for the very early of NICFI, you will have those quarterly. But I think monthly is perfect. Yeah, I think you have that.
Yeah, one question, like typically we are working with kind of ESA or NASA data, and then kind of the satellites are sun synchronous.
Yeah.
So which kind of artifacts do I hear it's not the case, right? So your fleet, they're not sun synchronous, right?
There's polar orbits sun synchronous. Yeah, there are sun synchronous. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we're in polar orbits. I think I had an animation, but yeah, polar orbit, north to south, sun synchronous satellites. They are all the 180 are on the same orbit. Yeah.
And maybe
one last question, is the infrared data also affected by cloud coverage?
So all optical bands are affected by cloud coverage. There's no spectral band on the optical domain that can go through clouds. So yeah, the near-infrared band will also be affected by clouds.
Maybe one comment, it would be cool kind of to test our model with your data. We haven't done this, so we just use kind of 10-meter resolution, so I think half meter, and the bands would work kind of there, right? So we cover all the 4 bands, and then 2 are.
Yeah, let's catch up for sure.
I can hear mental challenging. Nice. A last developer question, maybe, like there's API access to also download raw.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's a matter of what you want to do, right? So we have scalable APIs. If you have worked with RESTful APIs, there's nothing challenging on that. On the ones we have, so very quickly, you can put together the code where and when you want to access data, and just pull everything. What you get is a GeoTIFF in the end. So just regular raster geospatial data.
Nice. Thank you so much once more, and you're here and also tomorrow as well for any questions regarding the data set. Super exciting. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. Should I drop the call?
Yeah, great talk. So, the last talk for today, and I have 2 phones already here, that's how I know it's the last talk. Please. That will hold us back between the apéro and the audience here, and unfortunately the virtual audience has to imagine how the apéro will taste. I welcome Miguel to close up with a final talk on species distribution maps and how this biological insight can be very well suited to not just, now we talked about deforestation, but let's talk about biodiversity. And one of the most elemental insights that we have for biodiversity is figuring out where the species are distributed. And take it away, please, Miguel.
I mean, you put me in a very tough position. I'm blocking the people from the bar. So anyway, my name is Miguel. I'm originally from Bolivia. I work at the German Center for Integrative Biodiversity Research in Leipzig. I'll talk today a little bit about the challenges that we have. So let me try to share my screen. Now, let me see if I am doing this right. Oh, small, large. Okay. No?
We don't see it yet.
Yeah, can you see now?
No, unfortunately not.
Can't share your screen. You must grant permissions. Holy moly, Safari doesn't let you do this without going into settings. All right, so it seems to be that I cannot without.
You can restart, don't worry. You're not holding anyone back here, so all good. Feel free to jump out and change some permissions and then come back. That's usually a minute, yeah.
David, you have my PowerPoint. Do you want to share? Can you do that from your side?
I don't think it's that easy. I don't have access to it right
now. Okay. All right. Let me try to do that. Then I'll be back.
Yes. So in the meantime, maybe I want to take some words to take off the closing words. So right after Miguel, we can get the lunch done, which is now we had a lot of wonderful talks today about the data sources, the tooling, the tracks. There's a lot of more information in the wiki page. If you haven't figured out where the wiki page is, you just go to hack.biodivx.org. And then if you click on watch the live stream, you'll head to the wiki page. In the wiki page, we are completely open with the ideas. You can do whatever you want. This is a hackathon, nonetheless, right? So the only thing we expect is just for the 2 tracks, track 1, AI for biodiversity, please make sure you have a Hugging Face space ready at the end of the 2 weeks, so we can like play around with your model. And for track 2, also have some kind of a Jupyter notebook for us to inspect your visualization. That's it. That is really the 2 inputs we would need from you to basically evaluate the progress. And then lastly, if you don't want to figure out on your own what to do, if you need maybe some inputs and ideas, this wiki has you covered. We have data sources ready, way more than what we just presented today. We have mentor challenges, one just added today on it, where several mentors have even proposed and recorded some videos to talk about the challenge they would be very excited about. And we have tons of biological insights, because before that hackathon, we asked tons of experts already, what would you be interested in? What are the insights that are important from a biological sense? So feel free to take that resource, and feel free to also take advantage of all the mentors that have graciously committed their time to support. So Houston, we have a problem. I don't think we have yet.
Thanks for
So Miguel, I'm giving it back to you, and
flexibility. Okay,
stage
so
is yours.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Oh, I think we cannot anymore. Miguel, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I cannot hear you there.
Let me just text him and say that we can hear him. 1 second.
Okay, you can hear me. All right, I cannot hear you for some weird reason, but I'll just go ahead. So, again, we have a problem. That's very clear, and I want to really leverage and be conscious on the previous presentations that set up our data environment, our modeling tools available for this hackathon, and I want to just provide you with a little bit of perspective here. So we have a problem. The problem is here. It's not, thousands of miles into space trying to reach a different planet. The problem that we have is right here and it's right now. And the problem, we know exactly what is. We have a problem with biodiversity, and we are losing biodiversity at a magnitude never seen before. So to solve this problem, it will require really, really careful thinking, because this is a multidimensional problem caused by multiple factors. And here you can see some of the key aspects that are driving this biodiversity crisis today. Thank God we have a plan to address this. So the UN Convention on Biological Diversity has put forward a plan to address this biodiversity crisis. This is called the Global Biodiversity Framework, and this has been negotiated, discussed for almost 2 years, and now we have a plan. And this plan has 2 very important components. The first one has to do with definition of priorities. Where do we put our efforts? Where are the important areas that we need to conserve? What are the species that are more important? What are the species that are at the edge of becoming extinct? What are the ecosystems that have been mostly affected? There was this planet presentation that focused in Bolivia, for instance, in an area that has been highly deforested. Is this the area that we need to put most of our efforts to save biodiversity? This is a very important question to ask ourselves. And the second is, how do we measure that the things that we're doing to save biodiversity have an actual impact? These 2 elements require a system that allows us to measure biodiversity change. So in the biodiversity community, all scientists have gotten together and put their brains together to think hard, how do we do this? So instead of coming up with a new way to do this, we decided to borrow the system. And we look at the climate community. The climate community is much more advanced in many ways because it's a much more simple system to measure, if you can believe me. So you here have pictures of the way the people used to measure climate 50 years ago, and that way has not changed that much. We still use the same sort of technology, perhaps a little fancier, but it's the same way we measure, and we still measure the same environmental variables: temperature, precipitation, evapotranspiration. These are things that we've been measuring for many years, and in some places for even hundreds of years. On the center, you have two maps with dots, green and red. At the top are the green that represent precipitation. This is places where we have weather stations collecting data on precipitation. And at the bottom, you have temperature weather stations. This is, in essence, the global monitoring system for climate. And this allows you to open your cell phone every morning and look at your favorite app for climate and figure it out, how are you going to dress up for that day based on the predictions that you get on your phone. We would love to have something similar for biodiversity, where we could have in your phone an app that can tell us what's going on with biodiversity. So to address this issue, there was a group of people from the GeoBond community that thought about how to conceptualize and how to propose a set of metrics. And this concept, this framework concept that now has been sort of adopted by the Convention on Biological Diversity, is called the Essential Biodiversity Variables. This is analogous to the essential climate variables that I just explained. And there are multiple characteristics that these essential or EBVs, essential biodiversity variables or EBVs, need to have to be useful. And I just want to mention three. They should be able to cover all the dimensions of biodiversity, from genes to species to populations to ecosystems. They need to scale well in geographic space, but also in temporal space. The most important, perhaps, characteristic for the EBVs is that they need to be able to detect change. So these are the essential characteristics for these essential biodiversity variables, hence the word. What is under the hood? I borrowed this graph from a proposal I wrote, and this has 5 components. On the left, you have the technology, and you have some of the technologies that we will be using in the field. Soundscapes with these recorders that can help you understand what is the biological diversity. You have camera traps, you have eDNA, you have citizen science, and you have remote sensing. These are relatively new, right? But these are the technologies that we will be using in our competition. And then we would like to have an archive, like a place where all these things are going and they are being integrated. And then you have like a powerful supercomputer that is analyzing this with a model, with a fancy model that you guys probably will be developing. And then you detect the trends. You analyze the data, and this analysis allows you to understand what's going on over time. Is this getting better? Is this getting worse? And then at the end of this is the knowledge transfer. So this is perhaps the most important step, because what we're doing here is we're transferring this information to the people that make decisions, the policymakers. That is the last one. What is the data we have? We have seen all this amazing data that Planet Lab and the Crowther Lab has put for us. But I just want us to reflect a little bit. At the top of this slide, I have a GBIF, with the Global Biodiversity Information Facility that, as colleagues previously were saying, has 3 billion records and counting. But even though we have so much information about biodiversity, there are still places that we don't know much. You see some areas where the density of dots is not that high. And remember that we're talking about millions of species, and some of these species have not been yet discovered. At the bottom of this slide, you can see an analysis I did on the density of Lancet archive. I was curious about what is the places in the planet that have longer time series from the Lancet archive. My hypothesis was that everything had data for the full period from the 70s to today. But that's not true. If you dive deep into the NASA archive of this imagery, you start realizing that there are places that do have more data than others. Obviously, the US and other regions should have more, because this satellite actually was a US NASA mission. So it made sense. But for me, it was a bit surprising that South America had also a high density. So this is very revealing. And it has to do also with the fact that we do not measure all the biodiversity. Here you have two pictures. On the left, you have more or less what we like to measure. This is tetrapods, mammals, birds. And on the right hand is the actual size of the groups represented from biodiversity. We don't measure plants. We don't measure fungi. We don't measure, cephalopods. So there is a lot of groups that are underrepresented in our tools and our databases. And this data also has spatial and temporal biases, as you've seen before. So we are being given, you are going to have to deal with these points and go from left to right. This is your challenge, to reconstruct the biogeography of a species. How are you going to do that? You will discover that this is not an easy task, but you have a lot of tools and a lot of powerful tools to do this over the next couple of weeks. So I'm not going to repeat myself. This is a species distribution models. Other colleagues have talked about this, but in a nutshell, you're taking this gridded environmental data, you're building some correlations with biodiversity occurrences with a model. You can choose what model you are going to use. And then these correlations allows you to define a multidimensional space. And then once you have that multidimensional space, you can project that back into geographic space and create a map. That's what species distribution models do. But trying to simplify a bit even more what these SDMs are doing and reflecting a little bit on what exactly these are just classification algorithms. They just classify data where the species can live and where the species cannot live. But there is one important, a few important characteristics that this tool has. So the first one is that there is only one category of data to train the models. You have only presence data, right? For absence data, you need to come up with some tricks, right? And some people call that pseudo absence data, but I can explain more in detail when the teams are formed and you reach out to the mentors. The second one is that training data represents a window of time, right? This is very important because this data is not just a snapshot of how the species is looking at one particular moment in time. You can have data over a period of 100 years represented in GBIF data. And that's another important element to take into account. Model treats all training points as equals. We know from evolution and ecology that that's not true. My colleagues here in my office are not like me. We are the same species, but perhaps I like warmer weather than other people, and I can stand warmer weather. So that gives you a hint of how to treat these points. Then the next one is the model can be as complex as you wish. And this is very important because I tend to think that the models are like candies. We love sugar. And if you're going to let's pick the one that is the more complex, the fanciest one. But maybe you don't need the fanciest model to address the question that you have as a challenge. So just be cautious and be critic on the complexity of the model when you're going to do this hackathon, because not always the more complex model is the better. And so now, landing on the challenge, I would like to call your attention to something that Andrea mentioned also in his talk. Invasive species are a problem because they cost so much to the global economy. We're talking about 423 billion US dollars. And they look like this. This is a California poppy. This is a native species in California. This is a picture of the Bay Area. And that's the weather that they like to live in. This is Mediterranean climate. Mediterranean climate is very characteristic because it has very humid winters and very dry summers. Guess what? If you make a species distribution model using a global environmental layers, you will be able to detect where this species has become invasive. And it's exactly where you have Mediterranean weather. It's the coast of Chile, Spain, a little bit of Italy, Morocco, South Africa, Turkey, Greece, Australia. So the challenge here is how can you differentiate the native range from the invaded range? You can model these things. I can model them on my computer. The challenge here is how to tell apart these two things. And that's the challenge that I invite you to try to address. You have resources presented by previous colleagues, but I would like to add a little bit here. GBIF was already mentioned. There is a paper that I found when I was putting together this presentation today. It has a list of 60 art packages that present different ways of running species distribution modeling tools. So 60, it's amazing. I think it's great, but also proves challenging to select which one you're gonna use and you feel more comfortable. And there is this other data set that perhaps somehow integrated into the package that the Crowther Lab is providing. This is Chelsea. This is a climate data set. But the good thing about this, because it's not super high spatial resolution, it's 1 square kilometer. The good thing is that this is daily data. So it's really interesting because you could actually build correlations that connect the location of a species in time and space with a particular climate when that occurrence was collected. So be creative, and thanks so much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much.
And enjoy your Aperol.
I'm afraid you cannot hear us. Well, then I guess all the questions are gonna be referred to WhatsApp, but let me just turn on the camera. Maybe
Back to you,
see
David.
us. Yeah, thank you so much for that. So that concludes our presentations. Thank you. I'm gonna leave the call so he knows it's over. We have Apero prepared for you guys. Now is also a great time to just get together, organize some teams. Sarah has organized a small schedule how this will work. But I just wanted to quickly mention what happens tomorrow. So tomorrow, we're gonna meet here at noonish, and there are some mentors available online for you, but also in person. And this is gonna be the time where you're gonna digest what you have listened to today and eaten today as well. And then you will basically figure out, maybe this is something I want to tackle on, this is something I have more questions on. I have really no idea what I'm doing. So the mentor session would be perfect for you. So please come to the mentor session. And then by the end of tomorrow, we have a small form in the wiki that is linked. We also share it per email again and also in WhatsApp. We would like you to receive your team name by the end of tomorrow, because the moment you have your team name and also the team members, we'll give you full access to all the data that we have collected, and the hackathon can officially start for your team. So this is gonna be what happens tomorrow around noon, again here in this area. And I give the word to Sarah, and then we can head for Apero.
Hello everyone, thanks for being very patient. So just quickly, say before we start eating was our teams can be formed on Discord. If you look through our hackathon website, and I think once you click join live stream, it redirects you right to the Discord chat. And I think it's, am I saying this correctly?
Yeah.
Where's the link? Yeah?
Yeah.
So close to where the like meet us links are, you have your WhatsApp chat as well as the Discord. I've created a forum there and given you an example post of what to say. You can use that as a guideline or just directly you're free to chat with everyone. There's also a main channel, and for general discussions you can use that. For today, if you'd be interested, since some of you are here in person, it would be nice if after the apéro you stick around and we can form smaller groups for you to discuss maybe what things you're interested in, and if you already find teammates here, that would be great, and I think it'd be easier for you to work with them as well. But up to you. Yes,
what's the max team size?
There's no
No max team size. We recommend 3 to 4 people per team. Like usually more is not good, less is not good.
How many participants do you have again?
So we have roughly 35 on site and 80 remote, but remote we basically have no size limit. Yeah.
And since, like you mentioned, with the remote teams it's a little bit harder to connect, it's okay if you have a larger team in that case.
Yeah.
So
if you're 2 people as well, that's also fine. Yeah.
Alright, that's kind of it. Anything else to add? No? You can start eating.
And thank you so much. Also for the remote people. Bye.